Big dog. What up, everybody? Welcome to another coffee hour. My name is Paul Abernathy. I am your host for this hour, or plural hours, depending on how I feel. Thanks for joining me. I know it's important for you to function in your day, and taking a small amount of your day out to join us here for Coffee hour is appreciated. Again, I thank you all for joining me. Hopefully, you get something out of these. Couple new announcements that we want to shout out before we shout out to all of our loyal viewers who have joined us and share it amongst people all over social media land. Number one, I will be at NECA. So in case you're there in September, join. I think it's 12th through the 15th. I'll be at the Prismium Encore Wire booth. Okay, so feel free to stop by and see me if you happen to be in Chicago at the McCormick Center. I don't know anything else other than that. Okay, so I know I'll be there. I know that. So hopefully check us out. Secondly, we had a board of directors meeting last night, Zoom meeting, and or I should say my advisory board. And moving forward, all of our replays, and again, I might miss some, and Jeff might miss some. We might miss some, but all of our replays are going to be removed from the social media platforms once they go. You may be in the middle of watching one or whatever, but like today, one of our processes is today after this show's over, it will be moved over to the coffee hour series area over at Fast Tracks Tube, and it will be deleted from other social media platforms. It's just what they wanted. And I kind of agree to that because, again, we're trying to get away from, if you don't join us in the live, then, you know, you're going to have to either be a member of Fast Tracks Tube. And then we might miss some. It is what it is, and that might piss some people off. That's okay, too. Okay. I don't mind. So anyway, those are two announcements. Things will be moved over to Fast Tracks Tube as quickly as we can in that platform. So again, if you win a free subscription, again, it's great because you get to be able to get that access, that type of thing. And if you want to purchase it, here it is, Fast Tracks Tube. It's $99 a year. It's a way of saying thank you to us. And that's the whole reason we're moving stuff after all these years, nearly, I don't know how many. I've been doing online social media before it was social media since back in the early 2000s. So we're just trying to move everything over, as well as our podcasts as well. So again, trying to get everything consolidated down. It's just a big undertaking to have it on all different platforms. So, and some of the platforms may disappear. For example, Coffee Hour on YouTube probably will stop streaming to it, and probably will stop streaming to both of our Instagram, LinkedIn accounts, probably just one account, trying to consolidate it down. That's what we're trying to do. Okay. It's just too much to manage in all these different platforms. And again, we don't get a lot of clicks. So it's not like we're trying to get a lot of, now, what you will see, and you may not like it, what you will see is most of the stuff that we will share on social media, it's going to be very salesy. It's going to be trying to get customers and people to buy our products and buy our training. And if you're somebody that does not like that, and you're like, dude, I like everything for free, I get it. And will you be pissed off at me? That's fine. Again, I do things for business reasons, not for any other reasons. So I've given my share to the industry, so I don't have to worry about that. People say, well, you got to give back. No, I've given back. I've already done that. So done that, been there. Okay. Anyway, and I loathe TikTok. So we probably will also be stopping the TikTok stuff, at least from the live stuff. Anyway, it just is. But anyway, there's a few cool people over on TikTok, but most of them are dicks. So, all right. So welcome to today's show. Today, we're going to get into a series in the next couple of days and probably in the next week or two. We're going to be talking about the different wiring methods and having a conversation about them because we're building this repository over on the Fast Tracks Tube. So I'm going to be using Coffee Hour to do that. We'll be talking about different wiring methods and looking at the code and that type of thing. So obviously today's topic, as you see, we did not do a trailer on the other platforms. We didn't do a trailer where you saw what's going to be talked about early, like way early. So today we'll be talking about PVC, just simple, plain old polyvinyl chloride conduit. Okay. We'll be talking about the different types of PVC. We'll even look at the NEC Article 352, talk about some different things about PVC. You use it every day. And again, it's one of those types of wiring methods that made life so much simpler versus dealing with rigid or EMT and all those type of things, intermediate metal conduit. It just, and if you get Schedule 80, it is considered an extra heavy walled raceway. So again, it adds that extra protection for physical damage. It's listed in the code for protection from physical damage. So um, very much encouraged to use a PVC product in places where you'd be tempted to use a rigid metal. And one of the places I encourage you to use PVC more is between the service equipment and your meter enclosure, service equipment and CTs, all this kind of stuff. I encourage you to do that, especially on the supply side of your service disconnecting means. Again, it goes a long way away from creating objectionable currents and things like that we try to steer away from in the NEC, although we turn the other cheek to some of those applications on the supply side that we typically would say, well, how do you mitigate that? Well, you go with PVC. That's going to because you already have your grounded conductor going. So that's making connection at both the meter and in the panel or in an emergency or disconnect. So how do you remove the parallel paths? How do you remove objectionable current issues, even though the code kind of turns the other way or your jurisdiction looks the other way on the supply side? Well, you can do PVC. And that would also, I got to remember, turn my audio off here. Okay, on the TikTok. It's always the TikTok thing that causes a problem. All right. All right, so we're going to look at it, and today we're going to look at PVC. Now, remind you on all the replays that we do over on Fast Tracks Tube as we move forward, and we've made the commitment actually after the meeting last night. I was haphazardly moving stuff. It took me time. We were slow. Jeff was slow. You wondered, Paul, you've been saying you're going to move stuff forever and it's slow. Yeah, because we really were resistant to doing it because of the different platforms. But last night, and I listened to my board, even though I am the CEO, I still listen to the board. That was the whole deal. And they think more clear than I do sometimes. I'm more gut reactive. And they were like, nope, let's go. So anyway, I'm going to do what they say. They know best. They've been right so far. I've been wrong on a few things. So anywho, we're going to do it. So check out Fast True. But what I was saying is I'm going to remove all of this fluff in the beginning. I will remove the intro, the hellos and all that stuff so that you don't have to go through that over on the replay. Okay, so that's the goal. It's a little more editing on my end. I don't like to edit. Y'all know that. But that's what it is. So anyway, welcome again to Coffee Hour. All right. So let's get into welcoming some of the folks here. You know what we're going to talk about today? We're going to talk about PVC. So if you don't care about PVC, take care. Good. God bless. We'll see you next time. Okay. It's all good. You don't have to stay if you don't want to. What's up, Frank? Glad to have you here. What's up, Jason? Glad to have you here, my friend. Welcome. What's up, Rob? In the house. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Got that thinking camp on. There you go. What's up, Paul? Glad to have you here. Welcome. Cray Cray's in the house. Good morning, Cray Cray from Nashville, Tennessee. Thanks for joining us. Jonathan's in the house. Welcome, Jonathan. Glad to have you here, my friend. Poppy's in the house. 420. Welcome. Glad to have you here. What's up, Michael? I see you here, Michael. Thanks for joining us here in the morning. Santana. I see you here, Santana. Thank you for joining us here over on YouTube, watching on YouTube. Hey, let's see. Michael, you're going to be at Nika? Well, look me up. I'm going to be at the Prismium Encore booth. Stop by. Say hey. What's up, Manny? What's up, Manny, over on Facebook? Cute dog. Is that a French bulldog? That was what it looks like. There you go. Poppy wants the big dog.
Woo, 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 woo. Big dog.
There you go. Anselmo, glad to have you here, Anselmo, over on YouTube channel. What's up, Seattle, Skyattle, just a plain name. Okay, good morning. Glad to have you here. I see you, Manny. Manny's on the other platform. Now, Manny's showing you how to do the win. He's doing the hashtag win. There you go, Manny, with his limited edition Code Nerd hoodie that you can't find anymore. What's up, David? Glad to have you here. We got a CMECP in the house from down in Southwest Florida. Glad to have you here. What's up, Adrian? Adrian, welcome to the show. Watching over on the YouTube channel. Love to have you here. What's up, Douglas? Welcome. Good morning. Good morning to you too, my friend. Watching over on YouTube. Peter's watching as well. Good morning, Peter. Glad to have you here. Watching us over on YouTube. Seems like a lot of people watch on YouTube. There you go. Good morning, Rob. Glad to have you here. Simplex, James is here. Mr. Simplex from Alabama. Glad to have you here watching over on the tube. Oh, which also you can get to by just going to fasttrackstv.com as well. It forwards you to the tube anyway. So we have tons of tons of URLs, and they all push to different locations. A lot of people ask about the sites. What about masterthenec.com? That just pushes you to our main site. What about electricalcodeacademy.com? That just pushes to your main site. electricalcodeacademy.net.org pushes you to the main site. So the main site for everything is fasttracksystem.com. That's the main site. That's where our courses are. That's where you can get free stuff and all this kind of stuff. That's where that is, goodies. Everything else should push you there, that type of thing, eventually, depending on what you click on. Okay, that's the concept. Doesn't do very well for social, for SEO placement, because again, we suck when you search for us in search engines. But at the end of the day, I don't care. It's just the way it is. We'd like to be better in engines, yes, but do I really care? Scheme of life? No, I am winding down, so I really don't. Next couple years, I really don't care. That type of thing. I'm 56. My goal is to teach until I'm 60, and then we'll see where it goes from there. All right, let's see here. What do we got? Edgar. Welcome, Edgar. Glad to have you here. Stefan or Steven, however we say it, depending on where you're at or where you're from. Welcome. Red Dog is in the house.
Woo, 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 woo. Big dog.
Red Dog. Thanks for joining us. Charles is in the house. Welcome. Charles Bailey in the house. Let's see. What do we got? Brandon. We got Brandon showing us the win again. There you go. Brandon, welcome, my friend. We got a lot of the wins. Okay. We got Marlon. Marlon, good morning, my friend. Glad to have you here. And of course, we got David A. Good morning, David. Glad to have you here. Okay, guys, we're going to talk today. And by the way, keep letting me know if you got anything you want to chime in. Give me your experiences with, are you thankful? Are you thankful that we have PVC? Did you know that it comes in 5 types of PVC? We're probably only familiar with 1 or 2 types, that type of thing, but it does come in many different types. Again, may not be necessary for all of your applications, but it does come in various types. So anyway, thanks everybody again for chiming in. Again, continue it. I'll share it on the screen from time to time. If you got something you want to share or add, topic today is talking about PVC, polyvinyl chloride conduit. Okay. All right, let's go to the lesson. And of course, we'll go to the NEC where necessary to clarify some things. Again, 352, if you're studying for an electrical exam, 352 is not a very big article. So this is one of the examples of if your question's dealing with PVC conduit, like supporting, securing, all those type of thing, or construction within part 3, any of that type of stuff about PVC, if you get a question with that in it, and you can identify the question is very germane to the installation of PVC, then you're going to go to 352. You're not going to go back in the index for this. So that's a little tip when we do bold scanning for exam prep. Anything about your question that looks like it's specifically germane to rigid polyvinyl chloride or PVC, Schedule 40, Schedule 80, Schedule A, or Type A PVC, or whatever, anything like that, then you know where to go. Article 352. Also, if you've been getting our flashcards, you should be knowing how to just rattle off the different articles, okay? That type of thing. So, if you have those. If not, you've been studying for a time, you'll know what you're working with. Okay, so the NEC identifies 5 types of rigid PVC conduit. You have Schedule 80 PVC, which is extra heavy walled raceway. The overall diameter is the same as the 40 versus the 80. It's the wall thickness that is different. Okay, so obviously when it comes to volume, when we're putting conductors in a raceway and we're using Chapter 9, Table 4s and Table 5s and all of this stuff for raceway fill, obviously it's going to be a little different for Schedule 80 than it is for Schedule 40. So y'all are aware of that. So you got to adjust for that. I have some people that contact me out that have made an oopsie, means that they didn't take into account they were running Schedule 80 and they did the raceway fill for Schedule 40 and they were already tight, okay? They're already pretty tight in exceeding that 40%. This is an engineer thing. They were really tight, pushing the max, and then realized that they were running schedule 40 in the location and say, oops, so close, so close. So anyway, so what you've got is schedule 40. Then you have schedule 80. Then you have schedule 40. This is a heavy walled raceway with a wall thickness conforming to schedule 40 IPS dimensions. So one of the things is we probably use schedule 40 everywhere that we would run PVC, except for areas which we identify as subject to physical damage, which schedule 80 is okay for locations that are subject to physical damage. It's much more robust. I would also say that I tend to use schedule 80 more in installations when I worked with it in areas where it was going to be cold and I was worried more about the brittleness of it and I wanted it to be a little more resilient. Then I would probably remember that I would go with a schedule 80 simply because I wanted that extra strength in those locations. It wasn't so much that I was worried about somebody coming up and hitting it. It's just in locations where I thought it would be more susceptible, then I would do that. Now, interesting thing about this is that I could run schedule 40 in the ground. Obviously, it's in the earth, it's protected. But the moment that it comes out of the ground, if the area that we're dealing with is subject to physical damage, then I would change over to a schedule 80 PVC. And then that's where you can get in trouble because you might have done raceway fill for a schedule 40 and now it changes over due to the location to a schedule 80 and you didn't think about that. So that's one of the things you have to think about is the overall run. If I'm going to be moving back and forth from a 40 to an 80, okay, that type of scenario. Typically, the fittings are the same. So again, what's going to fit on a 40 trade size 1 is going to fit on a 80 trade size 1, that type of location. So just keep that in mind. They also have, and that's the 40, okay, which is probably what y'all run the most, a little thinner, but in really cold areas, probably better off to use 80. All right, now there is a type A PVC, is a thin-walled raceway with a wall thickness conforming to schedule A IPS dimensions, limited to underground installations. Type A PVC conduit must be laid with its entire length in concrete. Okay, so that is specific. You may have a drawing or set of plans or something that calls out a type A PVC and dealing with that type of thing, right? And I was going to see here, I was going to see if I could go down to the construction here. It would be beneficial, but I don't, not really when it comes to the NEC. It's not really overly beneficial. All right. So anyway, so that's just probably very few of you. If you do, a lot of people that are doing dug bank designs and things like that, they may use type A PVC for that application. It doesn't preclude you from using something like a schedule 40, that type of thing. It's just another type of wiring method that is PVC, type A. Next, you have a type EB. And again, you might not be even aware that there's just different types in their applications. So again, recapping. Good morning, Terrence. Glad to have you here. Crypto, good morning. Glad to have you here. So again, this recap. You have a schedule 80, more robust in areas where you're worried about damage. You have a schedule 40, probably the workhorse you use most all the time when you're using PVC. Then you have a type A, which is a thin-walled version that's really designed to go into the ground and encase in concrete. Then you have what's called type EB PVC. That's a thin-walled raceway with a wall thickness designed to achieve a minimum pipe stiffness of 20 pounds. Type EB PVC conduit is limited to underground installations, must be laid with its entire length in concrete in outdoor trenches. Okay. Good morning, Liney. Is it Liney? Lenny? Good morning. Glad to have you here. Okay. So that is very specific. I would think if you run into something like that, it's a design system. So it is something that the engineer is designing out, and then they would call out for EB PVC. I think that most of the people are going to just do schedule 40 because I think some of these others are probably pretty hard to find. Or they're not normal stock type of things. Now, if you're doing massive projects, then maybe. But there's I don't see any benefit to it unless it's cost benefit to have EB. So I'm probably going to see mostly schedule 40 underground work. And as it comes out of the ground where it's subject to possibly physical damage by whoever makes that call, then you'll see it change over to Schedule 80 where necessary. That's probably what you're going to see the most. Also, lastly, there is an HDPE high density polyethylene Schedule 40. Okay, so it's a high density polyethylene raceway with a wall thickness conforming to Schedule 40 dimensions. HDPE Schedule 40 conduit, also limited to underground installations, can be direct buried with or without being encased in concrete. So high HDPE is some tough stuff. So it's still Schedule 40 thicknesses, meets all those rules, IPS dimensions, but it can be installed with or without concrete encasement. But it is limited to underground applications, and it is HDPE. So above ground and below ground, Schedule 40, Schedule 80. The other types that are available, below grade underground applications, EP or EB is got to be encased in concrete, and so does Type A. It's entire length encased in concrete, but it can be underground. And then, of course, you have HDPE, high density polyethylene type. And again, don't get confused and buy that when the supply house says, hey, all I've got is some HDPE Schedule 40. It's okay. No. Okay. It's limited to underground installations and direct burial, but you don't have to encase it. Right. That type of thing. All right. Now, as far as the National Electrical Code, when it comes to the sizes of this stuff that's available on the market, we have seen a change, and I'll go and show you. But the minimum size that you're going to find for this is a half trade size. Right? We call half inch, but it's half trade size actually. And then the largest type of PVC that you're going to find is going to be trade size 6. Okay. And if you look at it, I'm going to show you. Hold on here. Let me go over here in the code real quick. Let's see. That might have been last code cycle. I don't see anything else in there that would give anything. So we'll just stick here. So, so it's as small as a half, as large as 6. And I would think the majority of the 6 of this size of PVC is probably where people would use it, running it out underground for various duct bank applications and things like that. Obviously, I'd want to run PVC than I would run anything else. I'm just saying in that scenario. Okay. All right, securing PVC rigid. So, okay, so you kind of look at here. This might be hard to see, okay? And we'll go look at the securing in dot 30. It's another tip for everybody when it comes to securing and supporting applications. Remember, in most of the wiring methods, dot 30 is the go-to location when it comes to securing and supporting applications, right? And obviously, something that's secured is considered supported. So, thinking about where do I go to find this, especially if you're on an exam and you get an exam question and it seems like it's talking very specifically about the wiring method, PVC, but then something about that question pops in there about securing or supporting applications, then it should throw you, again, obviously you're going to go to 352 and you could bold scan, but if you remember that securing and supporting applications, it's the same way in 334 for non-metallic sheet cable, dot 30, same scenario. Securing requirements, same thing in rigid metal, intermediate metal, rigid, all of it. The dot 30 is one of those that you don't have to remember everything about it. But if you can remember the article that you need to be in and it's a wiring method, then dot 30 is going to put you in the right place for securing and supporting, especially if there's a question on securing and supporting. So if I'm on an exam, I'm not going to go whipping through the back of the index looking for securing and supporting requirements for a PVC, for example. I'm going to know that it's a raceway, it's a wiring method, it's in chapter 3, it's 352, and the securing and supporting requirements are dot 30. So if that saves you a little time on an exam, it's great. In the field, it's just going to help you get into the code book much quicker, that type of thing. But anyway, that's what you got. So let's kind of look at the rules here. So it says each conduit must be fastened securely within 3 feet of the termination point. Okay. So if you look at this picture right here, and I can blow this up. I've been able to do this in the past right here. So right here, within 3 feet. Now, it says within 3 feet. Do you have to go all the way to 3 feet? Absolutely not. I mean, if you want to do it within 2 feet or 1 foot or whatever the layout makes better sense to you, or you're somebody that likes to put in way more supports or securements or whatever, that type of thing, then that's you. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. If you want to put in one every foot, that's your business. Okay? There's a lot of people that have their opinions on certain stuff like that, and I'm like, well, your opinion's your opinion. If you want to put in more securement, or you feel like it looks better, the one thing I will tell you about PVC is that obviously, depending on the location that you put it, if it's a lot of heat or it's in the sun, obviously you have to take in expansion and contraction into play here, and use expansion fittings where necessary, because it can move, it can deflect. And so there's a lot of people that believe, and you want to make sure that the securing method reflects that allows for it to be able to move, not hold it so tight that it can't expand and contract, because it's plastic. Okay, it heats up. Okay, it cools, contracts, heats up, expands, and you got to account for that so you don't have that spaghetti along your wall, right? But any other application where you might install it inside or things like that, you're not going to have that kind of issue. But if you want to put more securements up, then that's totally up to you. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Okay, you tell them Uncle Paul said piss off. You know what? What's up, Chad? Glad to have you here. Alex, glad to have you here. Good morning. All right, now, so that's 352.30A, right? And then the next is table 352.30B, support provisions must be followed for PVC conduits. So that's 352.30B. So you see that depending on the different sizes, that the supporting requirements can change, right? So let's go to look at the NEC. And obviously, really quickly, we're right here. Okay, notice it says securing and supporting, so get used to that. Now, when it talks about, here's the securely fastened that we're talking about here. A, it says PVC shall be securely fastened within 3 feet of each outlet box, junction box, device box, conduit body, or other conduit termination. Okay, and we're not talking about termination into a coupling. Okay, so it says conduits listed for securing at other than 3 feet shall be permitted if installed in accordance with the listing. So if you have a manufacturer, for example, has their own instructions, has their own guidelines, depending on what the manufacturer is, then obviously it has a listing for that, and you can follow the listing. But this is a minimum rule, right? 1 hole versus 2 hole strap doesn't matter. It's a preference. There's a lot of people that love 1 holes and a lot of people that love 2 holes. What happens is a lot of times, depending on the size of the conduit, it's going to dictate the 2. So 1 holes may be limited in certain size, where once you get to a certain size, it'll be 2 hole, those type of things. But again, it really doesn't matter. As long as it secures it and fastens it in place, you're good. You're good to go. I have personally not seen a whole lot of 6-inch 1 holes, but they might be out there. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Okay, as long as it goes with that strap is listed to go with that type of raceway. And again, obviously, if they make a 6-inch 1 hole strap for use with PVC, then obviously it's okay. You can do it. I guess there's a problem with that, but we'll see. We'll look more into the code. All right. So that's your secure. Again, so that's the general rule, right? Within 3 feet. Can it be less than 3 feet? Yeah, if you want. That's up to you, your design. Now, when it comes to supporting, okay, so this fastening, this is the requirement to be fastened, securely fastened within 3 feet. Then you get into supporting, okay? And the supporting will actually, as it goes along the span of the wiring method or the raceway, will be securely fastening it in place, but it's also doing the supporting role, okay? So it says PVC, we'll read it, PVC conduit shall be supported as required in table 352.30B. Okay, that's this table right here we'll look at. It says conduit listed for support at spacing other than shown in this table shall be permitted. So it's a permissive statement to not follow this table, okay, to be installed in accordance with its listing. So again, you could have, this is general rules. You could have a manufacturer that states otherwise. And some people say, well, what if the manufacturer says differently? Well, this is the minimum code requirement. A manufacturer could bring up and say, I want you to do it at more intervals, right? Than what this is, that type of scenario, right? So remember, this is a permissive rule, right? So That's it is permitted to install it in accordance with the manufacturer's listing. Okay, we just don't want to lessen the safety aspect of the code. What's up, Angel? Glad to have you here. Okay, most people, I'll be honest with you, most people don't even look at the manufacturer's listing. When it comes to that, you buy it, you see the mark on it, and you just follow the table. I mean, let's be real. That's what the vast majority of people do. I tell people, don't overcomplicate life. Too many people try to dig so deep into the weeds that they overcomplicate life. At the end of the day, I'm permitted to use this table, and so I'm typically going to just use the table. Okay, so that's what I would do. All right, so looking back at it here, it says horizontal runs, okay, not vertical, horizontal runs. Horizontal runs of PVC conduits supported by openings through framing members at intervals not exceeding those in this table. So you still have to have the framing members at a point where they're not going to exceed the support requirements of the table. But it's saying if you do run it through those framing members and those spacing between those framing members, a la studs, I'll use that as an example, studs. If your studs are spaced, and they probably will, because there'll probably be 16 on center or 24 max, then as long as it's horizontally running through those framing members, then and it is still securely fastened within 3 feet of the termination point, shall be permitted. Okay, so notice this and in here. Right, and ands are important. Why are ands are important? Because in the code we run into a lot of things that say this and that, or this or that. And so it's real important to understand what the ands are or, because you could have something that says one thing or it says something else, then you got to do this and that. Whereas if I have an or, it breaks up the requirement. In other words, it can be this, and you're like, okay, I got to do this, or I can do this. Right? So that's kind of understanding the rules of the kind of the ands and the ors, that type of thing. So I'm okay to run it through framing members as long as the framing members don't exceed the spacing allowances in the table, and I'm still securely fastening that raceway within 3 feet of its termination point into a box, to a junction box, things like that. Okay. All right. So the general stuff when it comes to PVC applications. So here's the table, and I'll just blow this up. I don't know how much this will show on screen. Actually, it shows all of it. Okay, good. I'll pin the header. So here you see trade side. Now, this is a metric designator used a lot in other countries. Don't be kind of screwed up on an exam. If they give you an exam question and they give you a metric designator, then make sure you just shift your mind and do everything under the metric designator, because they're not trying to trick you. They're just trying to make sure that you understand that you can use either or. Right? But most of the time, what we see is trade size. And again, we see half and we see one. We're so used to calling this inches, right? So we're so used to saying half inch, 1 inch, 1 1/4 inch. We're used to that, and it's okay. It works out for us. But reality, that's really trade size. Okay, it's not so much the inch value. I mean, it works out. So I mean, again, I'm not losing sleep over somebody going, oh, well, it's kind of like the sub panel people, right? They're like, well, there's no such thing as a sub panel. I'm like, well, we all know what the hell it is. So lighten up, Karen. So anyway, here we see half to 1. Then it needs to be maximum between the supports, in your case, the straps, or your framing members, not to exceed 3 feet. Okay. Okay. So again, maximum spacing between supports. Then you get to 1 1/4 through 2. You see it goes up to 5 feet. 2 1/2 to 3 goes to 6 feet. All right. 3 1/2 to 5, it goes 7 feet. Okay. This is a maximum spacing between supports. Then you see trade side 6, it's 8 feet. Okay. That's what we got in this application here. Okay. All right. So let's get back to the lesson real quick. All right. So here you can see, here was the 6 feet we saw. Here's the 7 feet, which is the 3 1/2 through 5. And here is, and I know it's hard to see it. There we go. That's better, right? Here's the 2 1/2. So here's between your supports. These just happen to be shown with 2 hole straps. Perfectly okay. As long as it's listed for use. You have to remember that there's a little old pesky thing in the code called listing. right? So there's also a big argument right now whether or not strapping and straps are listed, and we see a lot of this changing. 352.6 actually says PVC conduit, factory elbows, and associated fittings shall be listed, and the argument is whether or not these straps are considered fittings or not. I can tell you right now, when you buy a strap for use with PVC, ain't nobody going to critique it. The only problem you're going to run into is when you try to do something stupid, like use nails. And yeah, you could say nobody would ever do that. I got pictures of that. People do stupid things to support stuff, So yeah, as long as you don't do anything stupid, then you're going to be okay. All right. Let's see here. Okay, so there you go. So PVC must be fastened so that the movement from thermal expansion or contraction is permitted at 352.30. So again, there's going to be, depending on the temperature. So you have your ambient temperature, then you have what the hottest it can be. Typically is you can get this information from your weather society, or you can do it from different places like I think also Copper Development has a document, ASHRAE has a document. They can show you different temperatures. And so you got to remember that you have an expansion fitting that is adjustable. And so you have to make sure that you adjust it properly so that you can compensate for the expansion and contraction that's going to take place. Now, obviously indoors, conditioned spaces, not as much of an issue, right? We're not going to run into the same scenario, okay, that you would run into. But you do have to be aware of it and kind of keep that in mind. Let me see if I can't jump down to here. And just to show you, let me go right here and show you. Let's go to the code real quick. And I actually have a lesson. I believe it's over on Fast Track's Tube. I believe it is. That explains this thermal expansion and contraction. It says expansion fittings for PVC conduit shall be provided. Okay, so it's not an option, right? It shall be provided to compensate for thermal expansion contraction where the length of change in accordance with table 352.44a is expected to be a quarter of an inch or greater in a straight run between securely mounted items such as boxes, cabinets, elbows, or other conduit termination. Okay. So it's between your elbows, for example. And I was thinking I had an example here. Here's an example, but here's your table, by the way, if you're not familiar with how to do this and you're on the side of a building. I don't know if this whole table will show up. Okay. So here you see kind of the formula that works this whole out. And here you're looking for the length of change in PVC conduit. You'll see the different changes in length depending on the temperature change, right? And you'll see that over here it's in Celsius, and here you see Fahrenheit. Okay, so all of these over here in Fahrenheit, which is what we typically will run into, is we'll see all these, and then of course you got Celsius down here. Okay, and you'll see this goes down to 100 degrees Celsius, right? And you'll see over here in Fahrenheit. Okay. It goes all down. Now, one of the big things to remember here, okay, is this is your millimeter square. We don't typically tend to use this that often. We're over here, so we're doing temperature of change, okay, that we understand that we're going to do temperatures here. And what we see is you have the length, okay, and this is inches per 100 feet, okay? So a 5-degree temperature change is result in a 0.20 inches of movement in 100 feet, okay? So that's what you see there. So this is where you're going to get the table depending on what your temperature change is. Now, the one good thing about the code is here, and many people don't realize it's here, is this informative, it's the commentary, right? And if you have link, the commentary is available to you. I don't know if it's probably the same example that's in the handbook. But this just gives you an example. Because PVC exhibits a considerable change in length during the change in temperature. Obviously, it does, expands and contracts. And expansion fittings are required for specific temperature variations. According to table 352.44a, a 100-foot run of PVC conduit will change 4.06 inches in length if the temperature change is 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. So if your temperature change from the lowest to the hottest variable can swing 100 degrees, then you see right here, if 100 degrees swing from your lowest to your highest temperature, depending on the time of year, you've got a swing of 4.06 inches, okay, per 100 feet, okay? That type of scenario. So it adds up. It's a little movement along the way, and it all adds up cumulatively. For every 100 feet, you're going to have about 4.06 at a 100-degree temperature change, okay? Now, this allowable range of expansion for many PVC conduits expansion couplings is generally 6 inches, okay? Information concerning installation application of this type of coupling can be obtained from the manufacturer. So when you get the manufacturers, okay, let me get real quick back to May real quick. When you get this, and we have a video that explains this entire thing over on the Fast Tracks Tube. I don't know what you would search for it. I think it's just PVC. I can't remember. But we go through it. It's really simple. You have to know what your temperature swings are. All right. And if you know what your temperature, you can get what your average low is and what your average high is, and for your area, and you can make adjustment. But when you buy these fittings, okay, they're adjustable. Okay. And so you're going to make sure that whatever temperature you're at the ambient that you're at, how it sits in the swing between the 4 inches at 100, you have to look and see how it is in the swing and adjust your coupling for that so that it does have this allowance to move based on what your temperature that you're at right now. All these instructions, by the way, for people that say, God, I got to know how to do this, the instructions actually come with the actual expansion fitting. Whether people stop and read it, it's two different things, right? But it does indeed come with the instructions. Or you can go to the manufacturer's website and you can get that information on how to adjust these. But again, at the time that you're installing it is going to be different than the lowest temperature you could experience and the highest temperature that you could experience. And what you're looking at is seeing what is that drastic change in temperature from seasonally. And so again, most people, I think that they probably don't take those things into consideration, but you're supposed to. But this is only where you're going to have a temperature change that you're going to be, when you look at it and say, okay, am I going to have anything that's going to yield me a change that's going to be 1/4 of an inch or greater in a straight run between elbows, okay? Because you're going to have some deflection of the elbows, okay? So it's that between the elbows or between boxes, that type of thing. So I'm assuming many of you put these expansions on, although I've seen quite a few pictures where people are not putting these on and the raceway look terrible. I'm just saying, they don't allow for this movement. Okay. But remember, the manufacturer is the best resource to do this. Okay. But long and short, find your lowest temperature, your potential highest temperature. Again, don't get crazy, extreme. And then find out what temperature is you're dealing with today. What's the temperature that you're installing it? And then make sure that you adjust your fitting. It's not going to be all the way barreled down. It's not going to be all the way out. You're going to have to adjust it in your install to compensate for what the temperature is at the time you install it versus what the low and what the high. And you're going to have to look and see what the temperature change swing is in order to determine where you set this expansion fitting. It's really just that simple, but you go look at the manufacturer instructions. They'll walk you through it, that type of thing. But there's many resources that you can find out what your temperature swings are, okay? And I'm going to be honest with you. If you're not perfectly dead accurate on it and you still install these fittings and you're not barreling it down or all the way out and you give it no room and you're installing it on a day that's 85 and you know that your temperature is typically going to be 40 and then you have another one, then you know what? That type of thing. You know, you'll be able to make that. You'll be able to be close enough. Okay? I know one guy who I always talk to who said, Paul, it doesn't matter. At the time I'm installing it, I always put it right in the middle. And I'm like, and he says, I've never had a problem. I'm like, okay, if it works for you, whatever works for you, that type of thing. Okay. Anyway, I see expansion fitting straps from time to time, drives me crazy. Yeah, they first of all, they put the damn strap on the expansion fitting so it can't move. And secondly, they strap the raceways so damn tight that it doesn't have that. So that's why you want to make sure you use the right types of straps that's going to change with the temperature. Typically, PVC straps on a PVC installation doesn't mean you can't use metal, but you know they're designed in a way that's still allowed to move. So using the wrong types of straps, things like that can dramatically affect. Putting it too tight, okay, we're just securing it in place, okay? Yeah, the piston can't move if they strap the damn expansion fitting down. I've seen it installed so many poor ways that it amazes me. I've seen it done with the straps so damn tight that it couldn't move anyway, so it's pointless, okay? That type of thing. So again, read the instructions, use the right straps for the wiring method you're using. Don't just use something that's convenient, things like that. Follow the rules, use everything like that, and you're going to be fine, okay? All right, next. Bending PVC. Now, this is one that I get people that yell at me all the time. They say, Paul, you do what you got to do, and I get it, okay? What is it? Battle says, only have good luck using PVC straps to keep movement. Yeah, PVC straps with PVC because they expand and contract about the same. It's still PVC material, and it allows it the heat that builds up the strap. It also does the same thing, with the wiring methods. So they work together. It's my best advice, but again, people want to use metal. That's fine. Metal expands and contracts at a different rate than a PVC material would, obviously. So again, you have to make sure you're using a strap that is for that wiring method, and you're not just picking up, let's say, a rigid metal strap and using it on PVC. You get what I'm saying? Jason says, I've seen the expansion actually bust through the side of the non-metallic box. Yeah, because they sized it all wrong, right? And it just busts right through it because it didn't take into account that expansion contraction. Yep. And for electricians say, well, I'll be replacing that soon, that type of thing. So yeah, I mean, this is why we get the big bucks, so that you learn how to do those things. But again, rely on the manufacturer because they give you instructions for those things. And I think that is the one thing when it comes to that is follow what they say, when it comes to mounting and installing those things. All right, next, securing. Now, PVC bins must be made so that the conduit remains undamaged and the internal diameter of the conduit is not reduced. Okay, so that's 352.24a. So you see this picture here on the left, which again, I was going to do a hashtag. I was going to do a poll. A poll said hands up for everybody that does this. But theoretically, the reality is you're not supposed to bend these PVC conduits with a blowtorch. I get it. Or a heat gun. I get it. Now, heat gun a little bit better because it's a little more controlled heat, and definitely not a blowtorch. Back in the day, I can say that as an inspector, whenever I would see scorching on a PVC, and I would look to see whether or not we lost any inside a diameter, internal diameter, because if it squeezes thinner or something happens, then I have lost that diameter, and it can affect the conductors that are inside of the raceway, that type of thing. So I get it. People do it. We'll go look at the code real quick. 24. We'll kind of scroll back to 24a so you can see this. Ooh, where am I at? Sorry, I went too far. 22. There we go. Bins, right? So bends shall be made so that the conduit will not be damaged and the internal diameter of the conduit will not be effectively reduced. I mean, it's still the same diameter, right? But it's effectively, if you bend it improperly and it kind of footballs out a little bit, then you've effectively reduced that diameter, okay? Now, diameter is measuring across, right? So we have circumference, we have diameter, and we have radius. So if you bend it and it kind of squishes down and you say, well, it still has the same amount of area. Well, again, it says right here the damage, so it doesn't damage the internal diameter. So this way the diameter may increase, but up and down where it squishes down, the diameter is decreasing. So it's effectively decreasing the diameter. Doesn't matter which way you want to measure it, it's effectively decreasing diameter. So when an inspector looks at it and sees how you bend it, then again, they're looking at it going, well, and if I see scorch marks and I see that it's kind of elongated out, that's a problem. Now, you might say, well, Paul, really relax. It's not but 212s, 212s and maybe 312s and equipment ground. You're thinking, Paul, come on, it's not going to hurt anything. I mean, code is code. Okay, code is code. Now, they make heat boxes that allow you to bend it without damaging, without scorching it, that type of thing. Okay. So when we say, can I use a blowtorch or not, whether you're effectively good at it or not, reality, and I get it, I'm not going to be your Karen today. I'm not, you do you, but I will read this important part of the code. Okay. Bends shall be made so it doesn't damage or reduce the internal diameter, but then it goes on to say this. Field bends shall be made only with identified bending equipment. This is probably the number one sentence that everybody that bends in the field will use a blowtorch or heat gun like that, and it is not identified bending equipment. Now, there's folks out there that have built their own heat boxes. I've seen them. Billy Queso built his own little heat box. The problem is the bends in the field shall only be made with identified bending equipment. You're saying, well, it's identified by me. No, that's not what it really means. So they do make heat boxes that are designed that evenly distribute the heat, electric heat boxes. And if you want to bend in the field, the easiest thing to do is just buy the factory and be done with it. But I get it. Sometimes you got a little offset or something that you want to let me just heat it up a little bit, use a heat gun. Those aren't designed for that. Again, you do you, but if you ever get an inspector and they inspect it and it looks like it's scorched at any, right? If it looks like it's done anything like that, then they're within their right to reject your installation. And you might freak out and say, come on, it's just a little offset. I just had to get around the edge of maybe you're coming around the edge, It is what it is, okay? What Michael said, exhaust pipe, yeah, run it, yeah, well, it heats up. I've seen them do that also. In the winter, I've seen them do this around the heater that heats the area, like those gas blow heaters. Running it, spinning it in front of it, a couple inches away from it, shaking it until it gets kind of soupy looking. I've seen it all, but again, I'm not here to tell people what they do, what they can't do. I get it. I'm just saying that if you read the code, it's pretty damn clear. And if an inspector were to reject you, or if he were to come up on these bins and he were to say a lot of bins that weren't factory, and he were to say to you, can I see your identified bending equipment? So it's identified for bending, and you pull out the blowtorch, not going to work so well, maybe. Also, I don't know anybody that I know that I wasn't that great, that bends a PVC with a blowtorch without some type of discoloration. If you're using a heat box or something that's designed, or equipment that's designed to that, then it's not going to leave any discoloration on it. Okay, it's going to gradually heat it. Okay, but everybody's in the hurry. You know what I'm saying? All right. And also, for those that are bending in the field, I have seen those ones be. I have seen those springs, and I think that's what Tom you're talking about. Those springs where you put it into it and you bend it around it, that type of thing, or those kind of those cold bends they call it. If that's what that is an identified bending equipment, I guess whoever is identifying and a manufacturer is identifying, unless you're making your own, as long as it effectively bends it and it doesn't damage or reduce the interior diameter of that raceway, then I guess I'm okay. I think that product's probably going to be very limited to 1/2 and 3/4. I cannot see that being used on the much bigger than that. It just doesn't seem like you're going to be able to bend around one of those springy things. Okay. You know what I'm saying? So maybe that's not what you're talking about, Tom. But I've seen them. They're like a spring. You put it in it, and it's called cold bend. Somebody might make it. That might work as long as it doesn't damage or reduce the interior diameter. Okay, certainly going to be preferred over using a blowtorch. But I get it. People do what they got to do. I understand. Okay. All right. Now, as always, we have a requirement. I would say typically the easiest thing to do is just use factory stuff. It's already there. But I go, you're in a pinch. You got to do what you got to do. I'm not here to judge nobody, that type of thing. Now, when it comes to field bends, they must be made, again, with the identified bending equipment. The radius of the curve to the center line of such bends. So this is the center line, okay, of a bend right here. This is the center line. So the radius of the curve of the center line of such bend must not be less than shown in table 2 of chapter 9. Okay, so this is to make sure that the bend in the center, from the beginning of the bend to the end of the bend, is not too tight. So this table will tell you what the bending radius is, and you have to maintain that or be more gradual. If you exceed what's in this table, then the bend is going to be too tight, and it's going to cause it to kink up. Okay, so this is saying if you want to bend it in the field, that's fine. Just none of the bends can be tighter than what's given in table 2, chapter 9. Okay, that's all it's saying. Okay? If you ever wanted to know what table 2, chapter 9 is used for, this is an example of where it be used. Okay, not going to be an issue if you pre-buy these things. Okay, just saying. All right, discuss the different methods of providing bending. Well, we have benders. When it comes to PVC, pre-made, you're going to buy pre-made elbows and offsets and all that type of stuff. When it comes to, you can use heat boxes. I encourage you to stay away. Now, I will tell you, and look, I'm just going to say this for me, and I'm not saying I'm doing this, but if you are using a heat gun to do something, okay, right? If you are doing that, just make sure you slow down, right? And you stay far enough away. It's going to take you longer, but do not discolor the raceway. Do not leave any scorching marks. Don't get too close. Don't be in a hurry. Don't try to rush it, okay? And I'm not saying you can't buy a heat gun out there that somebody is identified as part of a bending process. I'm not saying that. I'm saying be careful. Don't be in a rush, because if you scorch it or you damage it or you collapse it, then you're going to run into an issue where somebody's not going to approve it. And who wants to redo that shit all over again? Michael said, do they make couplers that seat deeper than the standard one? I can't answer that. I don't know. You'd have to reach out to the manufacturer. I've never seen a deep coupling. I've always seen that it's all standardized when they make the fitting. So I don't know. They may. You'd have to reach out to manufacturer. Cantex, a couple of those companies, see if they make a deeper one. But chances are, if you've been running wire cable for a while and you've never seen one, probably a chance are they don't make one. Or they probably ask, why do you need one? Or why? Now, one reason somebody might say, well, I need a deeper one because I've cracked the end, but I don't want to cut it off. I don't want to get rid of it. So if I have a deeper coupling, it'll slide over more of the material. Well, the problem with that, I mean, just as a scenario, right? Just a scenario is that you're not supposed to install products that are damaged. So if you get a piece of PVC that's cracked at the end, right? And you go, okay, well, I'm going to still use it because it's damaged, then that would be, you couldn't do that because you're not allowed to install damaged product. Thomas says you can get some slip couplings that are pretty lengthy. So I don't know if they're not the total enclosed standard type of coupling, but they probably do make half couplings or couplings that go over for accidents or repairs of damaged area where you may cut it out and you have a longer one. I mean, I'm sure manufacturers make those types that would give you a little bit longer, right? That type of scenario. And I also, again, Adam says there are some jurisdictions out there that may say we do not allow field bending. Even if you have a piece of equipment, they may say, look, we want the factory material. We want to have factory elbows, that type of thing. Makes it hard to do a little offset, even in PVC with a factory. I'm assuming they make a little an offset in, most probably for 1/2 and 3/4 trade size. But at the end of the day, quick heating it up in a heat box can get you that little bend you need. Again, we're not going to stop people from doing stuff in the field. Okay, we get it. We're not going to stop doing what they do. Discuss the different methods of providing bends in PVC and why some methods are not allowed. Again, blowtorch not allowed. Heat gun, controlled distance, in a pinch, long as you don't scorch it or damage it, you know, I mean, nobody's over your shoulder, but I would recommend you not using a blowtorch because the moment that you scorch it, inspector has every grounds to say, no, thank you. Heat boxes, they make them in various sizes, that type of thing. And of course, factory elbows. Securing, oh, that's EMT. So we're out of PVC. Good, perfect timing. Just a few minutes over. So that's good. So tomorrow we will get into another wiring method and talk about it. Probably EMT. We'll talk about EMT. Let's see. One last things I'll touch on. As you all know, the number of runs in one run. Again, y'all all know the number of bends in the conduit shall not exceed 360 between pull points, right? So junction to junction, junction box to junction box. Those are conceived as pull points as well. If you can access it and you're going to be pulling conductors in it, okay? So don't exceed 360. So again, you're not going to have more than 490s. But remember, when you're doing 360 between pull points and don't exceed it, that the 90s add up, the offsets add up, all those type of things. Change in elevation where you bend it and put an angle on it. All those degrees add up so that you're not more than 360 between pull points. Okay. So keep that in mind. And by the way, if you're using larger PVC and you're going to exceed the 360 and you have a designer that says, look, we're going to be exceeding 360. Let's just put a box in there so we can meet this rule. You can't just throw a box in there. If you throw a box in there, then it could conceivably be used as a pull point, right? And then you're going to have to follow the pull rules in 314.28, and that's 6 times or 8 times, depending on whether you're doing angles or straight pulls. So remember, there is ramifications by just saying, look, I'm just going to dump a box in there. I'm not going to size this box properly, okay? And we're dealing with trade size 6s or 5s, and I'm pulling 500 kc mills in there for some reason. I'm like, oh, I don't need to worry about the pull requirements because I'm not going to be using that box as a pull box. I'm really just going to go through it. Doesn't matter. If you're putting that box in there in order to give you a break in that 360 so that you're not exceeding, then if it's being put in there, it has to be sized properly. Whether you intend to use it or not is irrelevant. Okay. So I can't just put some little ass box in there and try to achieve it. No, because you could conceivably pull through that box. And so in that scenario, if you're pulling conductors in there that are 4 gauge and larger, insulated, then you're going to have to treat it as a pull box because whether you use it or not, it's irrelevant. Now, as far as somebody like me that does a pull calculation, I may do your pull calculation with you not using that pull box because you've made it clear to me that you're not going to use that pull box. I'll ask you, I'll say, okay, you put this pull box in here to reduce the 360. Are you going to use that pull box? And the guy goes, well, not really. We did it to meet code. Okay, well, you could if you run into a problem. Use that pull box, correct? Yes. Okay, so you need to size it properly. Okay, but are you intended to use it? No. Then I'll do my pull calculation without that box being there. That way we see whether we're going to get sidewall damage or any other damage. So, but it's still a communication that you have to make with the design professional. They may be just putting it in there to meet the code because they had more than 360 degrees of bends between pull points. So you're adding a point in there to break that 360. Okay, well, you have to take that in consideration, okay? Thomas says, feel blessed with the 360 rule. Maryland Aviation Administrative limits the raceway runs to 270 degrees. Oh, so yeah, appreciate that that 360, right? That you get to have between pull points. Because again, other standards can definitely, now, that's a good question. So people ask me all the time, they go, well, how can they do that if the code is 360? Well, they're more restrictive. Okay, it's not like they went to 380. It's not like they went to 400. They went less restrictive. They went to 270. They're perfectly within their purview to do that. And so again, they're not lessening the code. They're making it more stringent. And if that's what their regulations are, then you got to follow their regulations. That type of thing. Also, I should point out a couple little things before we leave. Trimming. All cut ends shall be trimmed inside and outside to remove rough edges. I always see people on videos cleaning the inside, but they're not running it around the outside as well in order to clean off the burrs, kind of chafering the outside as well as the inside, that type of thing. So at the end of the day, it says inside and outside to remove a rough edge. If you've never been cut on a sharp piece of PVC, then you ain't living, because I have been cut on more PVC over the days, probably where people didn't, that type of thing. So another thing to remember. Also, since we're still on it, PVC, we want to cover the earth movement. So this is new right here. Not new, but new in a sense that it was relocated here, okay? And it also refers you to 300.5 as well, because that is for underground installations, direct burial depths at 300.5 and all that stuff. It says, expansion fittings for underground runs for direct burial PVC conduit emerging from the grade shall be provided above grade when required to compensate for earth settling and movement, including frost heave. Okay. So again, when you've got raceways underground, okay, direct burial conduits going underground and they emerge from ground, they shall be provided above grade when required. These expansion fittings above grade when required to compensate for any earth settling or movement, including frost heave. So this is not just back in 300. This is here now also in 352. So having an expansion fitting, again, where it comes out of the ground, if it's expected earth movement, in your jurisdiction will know that. You'll get used to that. Your AHJs, it's not just for the service. This is in 352. This is not just back when you're thinking, oh, only for when it comes out of the ground to a service. Okay, still germane, but you see that it's been added here in the 2023 edition of the NEC. Okay, so if there's expected movement, you're in an area where there is a lot of heave and stuff like that, then any of those PVC raceways that are coming out of the earth are going to have an expansion fitting on it to compensate for that movement. Now, is your AHJ going to be the one that calls this out and says, "Oh, we have frost heave here"? Different areas of the country. Obviously, there's not an issue with frost heave down in Florida, right? But if you're running on the side of the building and you're coming out of the ground, you still got the expansion and contraction you got to worry about. So two different things, but they kind of work together. This expansion fitting is specifically, this rule is anywhere where you have known earth movement, or you know that you have frost heave, example, where you're going to have that movement in any raised PVC that comes out of the ground, that somewhere in there you're going to be putting on an expansion fitting. A lot of people would say this is just to make more money for the expansion fitting, folks, but I have seen tons of pictures which were not related to service applications only, where you see them coming up for the meter. I've seen this to feeders to other buildings where it literally has pulled the KOs out of the box that it connects into. Okay, it just simply pulls it out because of the heave, or pushed it up into the box. And so again, every area is a little different. Work with your AHJ. They may or may not understand this because this is moved here. Okay, so it was still already in 300 for raceways that come out of the ground, but it's also now here in 352 in general. So make sure you work with that. The last, I don't know if this is the last one. We'll look at this. Look at a couple more, because I am doing this for Fast Track's tube. We'll look at a few more here. Bushings. Here's a misconception that people don't understand when it comes to, do I require bushings? Now, we're not talking about the one in 300.4G, okay, where you have protection of conductors that are 480G and larger. That requirement, that's a general requirement, okay? For insulated conductors of 4 gauge and larger that comes out of a raceway, that is 300.4G, okay? This one is specific, okay, specific to PVC. It says where conduits enter a box, fitting, or other enclosure, it says a bushing or adapter shall be provided to protect the wires from abrasion unless the box, fitting, or enclosure design provides equivalent protection. So you might have a fitting that's designed itself with a smooth edges, a belled edge. It could be the fitting itself. Again, going to be one of those calls that you're going to have to make. I've seen plenty of small half, 3/4, and 1 that are not smooth as they come out in the thread. So interesting about 352.46 is, remember the one in 300.4G, that's specific to 4 and larger, right? This rule right here does not have a size on it, right? Does not have a size on it. So as you can see right here, it's not limited to 4. So 1/2 inch, 3/4, one trade size 1, 1 1/4, whatever. The only thing it says you have to provide a bushing, okay, or some type of adapter on the end that's not going to have that sharp edge on it, that type of thing. But it doesn't matter because it requires the bushing unless you can show that it's already designed into the box or into the fitting. That's on you. That's not on me. I will tell you that most of those smaller ones probably have a rounded edge, so it would not be a sharp. But you could have an AHJ that says every fitting, every connector that enters, no matter what the size is for PVC, unless you can show that it is some type of adapter or built into the box, into the fitting, that is going to protect those conductors as they come in, then it's going to require what? It's going to require bushings. Okay. Can I conceivably see an AHJ going, look, I want bushings on every PVC entry? Unless you can show them that the fitting doesn't require that type of bushing. And where would you get that information? It's going to sound really simple, and you heard me say this a million times. All you got to do is reach out to the manufacturer. That's what we do. That's what our job is. I can tell you how many contacts I get from people when it comes to wiring cable, simply asking me questions. They send them at codes, CODES, at encorewire.com, asking things that people would think maybe is very simple. But at the end of the day, it's answering the questions that they need. And many times it's to provide for to the inspector. And we do that. That's our job. So in this case, if you don't want to use bushings on the smaller 1/2, 3/4, 1, take the fitting, contact the manufacturer and say, am I required to have a bushing on this? Are these ends considered rounded or smooth or whatnot? Remember, ask them what you want. Don't beat around the bush. Ask them specifically what you're trying to do, and that way you keep that document with you. And if you use that type of connector on all your installations, then you don't use bushings, and the inspector rejects you and says, hey, but what about 352.46? You go, here's my document from the manufacturer on this fitting, says I don't need them because of the way the fitting's designed. Then you're golden. Otherwise, if you can't provide it or you don't know, then the code is pretty clear. You're going to provide bushings if you can't show otherwise. Pretty straightforward. Just remember, this one's different. This applies to 1/2, 3/4, 1, 1 1/4. That's different than 300.4G, which is only applying to raceways for 4-gauge conductors and larger that are insulated. There's a big difference. Also, remember, by the way, 300.4G, when it comes to the bushing, does not apply to cables. Not MC cable, not SE cable. You can put the extra bushing on there if it makes you feel good or not, but the fitting's designed to make it unnecessary, the way it clamps the cable before it gets into the box. So at the end of the day, if you want to still use them and you want to spend the $1.50, $2.50 on them, that's you, go ahead. But it's not a requirement. AJ says, what about pests coming up through the edges of the conduit? I'm not sure what you mean by that. I don't know what pests. I guess they could come up. It's not going to come up with a conduit if it's sealed and glued properly. I don't know how the heck they would ever get in there, that type of thing. And if you're talking about putting a fitting on a raceway that you did with a blowtorch and it becomes oblong, then I don't think the fitting probably will go on too. But even if it did, the glue would probably fill most of that, provided you folks glue. All right, that type of thing. As it comes up out of the riser, I'm not sure I understand your question, AJ, because again, the raceways should fit tight together. They should be glued together. That type of thing. Okay. Expansion pipe. They usually has a most of the ones I've seen has an O-ring in there at some point in there, up inside the design, that type of thing. Okay. Yep. David, I don't know whether that's germane to the topic, but that's a different type of bushing. So what David's talking about is an anti-short bushing for MC cable. What we're talking about is the bushing that's required by 300.4. I routinely see people with SE cables or whatever coming into a box where the conductors come out onto the fitting, they screw on a protective bushing that's covered in 300.4. It's not really the same as what you're talking about, which is a red head, which goes between the actual armor and the insulated conductors. Obviously not required for MC, required for AC cable. You wouldn't use AC cable on a service application, so it wouldn't come into play, that type of thing, okay? That type of thing. Expansion joints every 100 feet. Expansion joints get put, that table, it must have been a delay, must have been extremely delayed for you, Poppy, is the expansion fittings in that table just shows the movement every 100 feet, okay? That type of thing. Yeah. Different bushing, David, that we're talking about, okay? All right, let's go here. Okay, so 352.48 joints says all joints between lengths of conduit and between conduit and couplings, fittings, and boxes shall be made by an approved method. Okay, obviously you're using the fittings and you're going to be using PVC glue and following the instructions for your PVC glue. That's not a problem. So you're going to be listed fittings, transition fittings, all those type of things you're going to be using. 56 splices and tabs. Splices and tabs shall be made in accordance with 300.15. And if you look at 300.15, it tells you all about these rules and transitions and things like that. And you're not going to have splices, obviously, inside of any of these wiring methods. Okay. And I don't know why these errors are coming on. All right. And then they got grounding. It says where equipment grounding is required, a separate grounding conductor shall be installed in the conduit. That is a no-brainer. Obviously, it's PVC. So if you need equipment ground, and I can't imagine any circuit, we're not talking even ungrounded circuits is still going to have an equipment ground. So you're going to have to install equipment ground. You have some exceptions down here, okay, where it says an equipment ground conductor shall be permitted to be run separately from the circuit conductors as permitted in 250.134 exception number 2. And for DC, those type of applications, you have some allowances, but let's see here. An equipment grounding conductor should not be required where the grounding conductor is used to ground equipment as permitted in 250.42. That is the legacy stuff. That is where you're going to be prior to where you run 4 conductors. So prior to 96, I believe, and that's the situation is where you can use the grounded conductor, like with ranges and dryers and where things like that. No, actually, I don't think that is that. Damn that. No, I think this is okay. Yeah, so that's different. So this is where you don't have an equipment ground is run is again you don't have an equipment ground because this is dealing with supply side applications. Stack on it where you're actually using the grounded conductor and you wouldn't need an equipment grounded conductor because there's absolutely nothing that can trip it, that type of thing. I don't know where I went with the other one at, where my mind was going with that. Anyway, so again, there's examples where you would use the grounded conductor on the supply side. And if that's the case, you're not going to have an equipment ground. What's the point? You're not going to clear an overcurrent device because it's on the supply side. And that's what it's talking about at 250, 142 and certain things like that. Okay, let's go on and do some contests here. Let's do a little spinny of the wheelie wheel. Let me see if I got everything scheduled out here. We move some stuff around here. All right. Okay. Let's give away some stuff. Let's spin the wheel. I went a little over today. It's not too bad. I'm getting better. Yeah, let's see. This is 2023 NEC Enhanced. And if you already have it, I would still keep this because I will allow folks that want to defer this to the 2026 to be able to get the 2026 when we release that. That's going to be a while, so don't bug me to death about it. But at some point when it's released, you could exchange this for the 2026. Anybody in the past? No, this is just from his statement today. So Jonathan, I would leave the drawing for this, whether you have this or not. Because again, I'll let you use it on the 2026 if you want, that type of thing at some point. Let's spin the wheel. That's good. You're welcome, Cray Cray. All right, so melting toast. You have Fast Tracks too, but I think you probably already have it. So we'll spin again. For those that don't have it, you really want to make sure that you get it because, again, as our stuff starts moving off of the different platforms, that's the only place you're going to find it. Now, we will get some free stuff away. Damn it! Do it again. We will be giving away some free videos on there, but not very many. Most of the stuff's going to be behind our paywall for subscription. If you're an enhanced student, you already get access to it for 12 months. We're hoping that you like it enough and that you want to stay with the community that you'll renew it after your 12 months. That's what we're hoping. All right, Melt the Toast. I got you down for the slate coaster drawing. Okay, there you go. Let's get two more in here. You're over on TikTok. You're not getting a chance to win unless you go to the show. Then you do hashtag win over on whatever platform you want to watch. Edgar, you are in the drawing for Trade Hog. No, Edgar, you didn't win it. You're in the drawing for it. It's a big difference. Don't be sending me emails. Also, by the way, I mentioned this really late. We'll be recorded show on Thursday. I have a doctor's appointment for my diabetes doctor, so I'll let y'all know. Angel Luis, you're in the drawing for the VD card. Okay. All right, let's do one more, and I'll let you folks go. I know I'm over. I'm about 22 minutes over. Sorry. I'm getting better. Tomorrow, I believe we'll do EMT. You never can have enough of these minimalist wallets. I have multiples that I use. Okay. It just depends which one I grab, that type of thing. I have one wallet I use when I'm boating, and then I have one wallet I use regular because it has different information in it. I leave the boating one I put with the boat. It's got the registration, yada, 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 all that type of stuff. So anyway, all right, there you go. Let's get back to me. All right, hopefully you got something out of today's episode. If not, sorry, can't help you. But I'm glad you joined me and join me every morning. So tomorrow we'll be doing another wiring method. And then Thursday it'll be a recorded show, right? And then Friday we'll be back to normal. And there is more buzz in the office about getting away from 5 days a week. I just like doing it every morning. So again, I'm probably going to pull rank on that. But anyway, I appreciate all of you joining and those that subscribe to our Fast Tracks Tube, those that are Fast Track students that are continually support us. We appreciate it. We couldn't do this without your support. So again, thank you all. Y'all have a great day. And we will catch you again tomorrow on another episode of Coffee Hour. Take care. God bless.